This title is narrated with virtual voice, computer-generated narration for audiobooks. The Bride's Revenge by Philip Anthony Smith. Prologue. Olivia, 2025. Time eerily stood still. The only thing not affected by the strange phenomenon was my hammering heart, unyieldingly smashing its way through my fragile chest. The sheer magnitude of each thump tensed each muscle in my arm in turn, like tumbling dominoes, pulsing and throbbing as it sent intense shockwaves of unadulterated rage down to the palm of my sweating hand. My stalwart gaze wandered for a fleeting moment, eventually settling on the quaking fingers that were still fervently clinging to the knife handle. My fingers, caught up in the midst of an unwelcomed out-of-body experience, my eyes gingerly continued upwards, tracing the shining edge of the few inches of steel that was still exposed to the light until the blade came to an abrupt halt in his chest. The adrenaline coursed through my system like electricity, tingling and burning my skin as it whizzed past, supercharging my senses beyond their limits in the process. My heart instantly ceased to beat as I remained transfixed on the entry wound with bated breath, patiently waiting for the first droplets of blood to seep out and begin to stain his crisp white shirt. First came the smell, a rich metallic aroma that saturated the room, coating my parched tongue with the taste of rust. My eyes widened in shock as his very life essence started to trickle out of his wounded chest. It started with a fleeting, single droplet, almost resembling a microscopic ruby-colored oasis, sitting out of place in a desert of thin cotton. In a matter of seconds, the tiny droplet began to grow, and once the fabric near the wound soaked in as much blood as it could, the scarlet mere went on to rapidly expand like an overflowing river, bursting its banks wildly in every direction. It grew into an unrelenting tsunami, the crimson wave drowning everything around it, quickly swelling all of the clean fibers in its path, so much so that the gore began to pool on the surface and run down his chest, encountering no resistance whatsoever. I was suddenly jolted back into reality, finally realizing the irrevocability of what I had just done, and I woefully looked into my quarry's pained eyes, which remained uninterruptedly transfixed on mine. I felt the sensation of a tear rolling down my cheek, irritating me as it fell, so I instinctually shook it off my face and watched it crash onto the concrete beneath my feet. When I tentatively looked back up, his cracked lips parted as if poised to say something profound, so I leaned in slightly to catch his labored last words. Still holding the blade in my right hand, I grabbed his shoulder with my left, shaking him gently to try and coax the words out of him. He exhaled as best he could, a wet, bubbling crackle of blood filling up his lungs as he desperately tried to mouth the words on the tip of his tongue. "I'm sorry," I whispered. As soon as the hushed words parted from my lips, the spell was broken, and time started to pass normally again. Without further warning, his quaking knees went instantaneously limp, his reddened eyes rolled back into his skull, and his entire body nauseatingly slid off the end of the steel that was still plunged into his chest. He plummeted helplessly and landed on the floor with a damp thud, leaving me standing tall above him, with the weapon still firmly gripped in my hand. I could almost hear his feeble lungs gurgling as he gasped and fought for every breath. He was coughing and spluttering while fretfully clawing at the cold concrete with his splitting fingernails in a desperate bid to put some distance between him and his entranced assailant. The scarlet lake beneath him began to spread out rapidly, the edge of it shyly reaching the toe of my trainers, so I recoiled in abject repulsion, which is when my eyes got a full picture of the atrocity I had just...
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.